Hi everyone, Morgan here. So I have had quite the history with sourdough starters, just with the whole history of sourdough. And so many years ago when Ethical Preparedness came out with a video about sourdough, I was very intrigued. In fact, before that, I'm not sure I had ever really heard of sourdough. I wasn't like really super into that community. And I don't know what community I'm thinking of when I say that community. But anyway, my point is I wasn't really like super invested in trying to make my own, yeast starters, essentially. I became super interested after that because that sourdough starter went really well. Like I followed the directions in his video and I did it. But I think where I failed, like the starter looked really good. And if I'm finding pictures, you'll see them on the screen, but if I can't find them, then whatever. But the starter, it looked really good. I fed it for like a week. I took half out and I did the feeding and all that for like a week. And he told me after about 7 days or so, you should be able to start some bread. And that's kind of been the general consensus that I've heard from most people. After 5 to 7 days, you should be able to use the starter to make bread or whatever. But I think at that point I was confused on how to use it. Well, how much starter do I use? How do I make bread from this starter? It was very confusing and I wasn't finding like a ton of information. Either that or I just didn't go looking for the information or it was still confusing or something happened. So I let the sourdough starter die. I'm not sure if any part of the sourdough process is easy, okay? Mainly because when you look up sourdough starter, every single website, every single person that you talk to has something different to say about it. When I posted about sourdough, about one of my sourdough breads failing, everybody told me something different. Literally every single comment, I had anywhere from 100 to 200 comments on that Instagram, and every single comment had something different to say, okay? That's why I think it is so frustrating for a lot of people to do sourdough because it's something different. Everybody has something different to say. My friend Allison from This Prepared Life sent me this sourdough starter. Now, I have never started from a sourdough starter. I've always wanted to be one of those Puritans. It's like, no, I can get my sourdough started from scratch, right? With just the flour and the water. But I'm admitting defeat because after my third attempt, I did that first attempt many years ago. Then I tried again in the RV and somehow it failed and I let it die, whatever. And then the third time I tried when I was in Alaska and it actually looked like it was really good. I followed directions to the T from this book that I had. It was Alaska sourdough book. So I was like, all right, cool. They've got it down, right? And it told me after 5 days I would be able to bake with it. And I baked with it and it failed. And everybody in the comments again were telling me 5 days isn't nearly enough. You need at least 2 weeks or more. Okay, so what I did is I took I filled this with a quarter of the starter. She said to just put enough water, not tap water, but just enough water to like cover it so it rehydrates. There we go. So just enough to rehydrate. All right, so now it has all rehydrated. There's like a couple little bits that I'm kind of stirring it a little bit, but it looks good. Oh, did it just a sourdough starter all over me? Okay, so yeah, I mean, it looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and start adding to it now. So she said to do 2 parts. She said just to do 2 parts of whatever. I'm going to use wheat flour, like straight organic wheat flour. I'm not messing around this time. I'm not doing any all-purpose flour or anything like that, although I may be able to. I don't know. I feel like people are just very particular, so I'm just going to I'm doing 2 parts, whatever parts of that, and then I'm going to do 1 part water. She said some people like a runnier one, but that's what she does. She makes it a little bit thicker. So here's what I'm doing. All right, so it's mixed up all nice and good. So again, she says she likes a nice thicker starter. This is actually a lot thicker than I have worked with in the past of my 3 failed attempts. So I am just going to go with what she's saying.
So for about 3 to 4 weeks, what I did is I fed it twice a day. What I did is I discarded half of it and then I put in a 1/4 cup of flour and then a 1/4 cup of purified water. I did this for about 3 to 4 weeks. twice a day. So in the morning and in the evening, I would do this, and it became this nice, bubbly, delicious goodness. So I decided to try something. I decided to use some discard and make discard pancakes, and they came out very good. We enjoyed them. But I decided to make it into all-purpose flour instead of the wheat, which I was doing. So I decided to just transfer half of it and start making it into all-purpose flour, which I use more of anyway.
So, I store all-purpose flour, but I also have, the red with the hard red wheat berries and the soft white wheat berries and all these things. So if you ever do want to transition your sourdough, you can definitely just start from scratch, dehydrate some sourdough, then rehydrate it and start from scratch. Or, take half and do half and then, get the new flour in there like that. You can always transition. So what I'm saying is with sourdough, you don't always have to keep the exact same flour. Yes, you want to be consistent, but if you are going to transition, then just take half of the old one, put it in, and then just start feeding it with that new flour, and it'll transition into that new flour that you want. So far that's been working for me.
So I transitioned it and fed it, and it was transitioning beautifully. And now it is an all-purpose flour, and oh my, it smells so good. I love smelling it. But yeah, it transitioned really good. Now I just use all-purpose flour, and I love it. So I decided after about a week of feeding it into the all-purpose flour to try to make bread. I decided to make sourdough breadsticks, which actually did still use yeast, but it used the sourdough as well. So I haven't used full sourdough just yet. I am using the yeast, but kneading bread is like one of the most therapeutic things you can do. And plus, it's really good for your arms. Like, I don't need any weights. Look at those muscles.
After 5 minutes of kneading, which is so therapeutic, by the way, it is nice and smooth and ready to rise, that is.
Once it doubled in size, I actually rolled them out into the biscuit, then let it rise again for another hour, 30 minutes, an hour, something like that. And then I put it in the oven, and then it came out as this. Beautiful. Look at it. Oh, look at that innards. Oh, so good. Oh my gosh. It tasted as good as it looks. This was a family hit. Me, my husband, the kids, everyone absolutely loved these breadsticks. So easy with the sourdough. I just loved it. It was so good. One of my absolute favorites. So great choice. Yes, good winner.
So at this point, what do you do with your starter? Now that you've got it established, what are you going to do with it? Well, you bake with it, right? So you continue to bake with it. You can keep it on the counter, feed it twice a day, and you just continue to bake with it. Now, if you're not going to bake with it, you put it in the fridge. Like if you're not going to bake with it regularly, you'll put it in the fridge. Now, once you want to bake with it, you take it out, you feed it, and then you let it, bubble up again and get active for at least 12 hours. Like you want to feed it 1 or 2 more times until it looks really active. And there's also, once you take it out of the fridge, and then there's also a water test. So if you put a clump of it, like you put just like a drop of it in water and it floats, it's good to go. But, you want to make sure that it's bubbling and it looks good, and that it looks good and active. So you can keep it on the counter or continue to feed it once or twice a day. If it has any sort of hooch on the top, be sure to feed it more. That means it's starving. If you want to dehydrate your sourdough, you wouldn't actually put it in your dehydrator. What you would do is you would take a pastry brush. You put down a layer of parchment paper. You take the pastry brush and you take it out, and then you just basically brush it on the parchment paper, and then you just let it sit out and dry out. That is how you dry sourdough starter. You don't put it in your dehydrator. Unless your dehydrator can get below 98 degrees Fahrenheit, you do not put it in the dehydrator. So mine can't get that low, but you just air dry it and it's fine. And then you just you do not powder it. You just kind of crunch it into little flakes. And there you go. So I'm starting to get the hang of this whole sourdough starter thing, but it's nice to have the starters. I do have a couple from friends still, ready to go in case this one ever dies or anything. But it's an interesting exploration, and I really am enjoying it. And I hope that you will start your own starter. Honestly, the best way to do it is just go get a dehydrated starter and just do it from there. And then if you want to try one from scratch yourself, go ahead and do it. Once you already have one nice and good and ready, then go experiment with the other one. But thank you all so much for watching Conquer Around Preparing today. Talk to you later. Bye.